Okay, so this is a presentation we put together. I did this training for West Palm a few ago. Before I get started, I always like to tell like an inspiring story. So when I had an agent reach out to me, Marcos from West Palm, our partner there, reached out to me. He had an agent, Lewis, and he said, "Hey, Lewis is going to reach out to you. He doesn't really do leases. He only does residential sales, and he needs some guidance." Luis calls me and he's like, "Look, I don't really do leases. Do you want this?" And I'm like, "What is it?" And he's like, "I don't know. I went to furniture store, started talking to a salesperson. He asked me what I do, and I was just trying to buy a couch. I told him I do real estate, and he was like, 'Hey, I think the owner's looking for another location.'" And he's like, "Oh, we'll trade numbers." So he's like, "I don't really do leases like that, Massiel." And I'm like, What's the business? Who's this guy?" We start talking and he's like, "I think he wants like a 20,000 square foot warehouse." And I'm like, "All right, let's give it a chance. Let's talk to him." Ends up being, long story short, it ends up being that the guy needs a 50,000 square foot warehouse. And we locked in a 10-year lease. And if you do the full math, when you're doing the math, it's price per square foot plus increases. There's 3% increases for the next 10 years. And that's the number that we get paid our compensation on. So at the end of it, both Lewis and I made $120,000 each from a lease that he was not going to take. So let's not leave that kind of money on the table. We don't know who we're talking to, and it could be from a small retail up to a big warehouse, up to, I know Marcelo does a lot of,
Yeah, I do a lot of automotive. So I do a lot of dealerships, mechanic shops, body shops. And those usually they want long leases as well. Usually do like 5 to 10 years.
So when we're talking commercial, your location identifies with your business. So you don't want to do a 1 year. The landlord doesn't want to do a 1 year, and neither does the tenant, right? Because they want to lock in their business to that location. It's very vital for their business and how it runs. If they're located in Doral, like their clientele, whether it's foot traffic or whatever, it starts coming to that location. So that's the reason that they lock in for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. It is very common for them to have increases as the years go, but they lock in the initial rate and then have these increases. Normal increases can be like 3 to 4%. That's something that we negotiate. So as we go through this, you'll see that there's a lot of things to negotiate. Where in residential, you're negotiating the price and maybe some stuff during inspection. This, you're negotiating the term, the increases, the improvements. There's at least like 5 different things that you're negotiating at the same time. I like to call them levelers. And when you're going to offer lesser on the price, then maybe go longer on the term. So if it's different, if I offer 3 years and I try to go less on the price, but if I tell them I'm going to go less on the price, but I'm going to offer you 10 years, and you're going to have increases. And there's been ways to do it where I go super low on the price initially, but then I do the increases higher so that it reaches the market rate. But at least it allows my client in the beginning to catch up to that first year, which is the hardest when you're doing a business.
And there's rent abatement, TI.
Right. So we're gonna go through that. We're gonna go through the terms. As you know, when I start talking about abatements and TI and all of that, I want you guys to know what it means when we're talking about it. So has anybody here done a commercial lease real estate? Okay. Okay, good. We have some experience then. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, the nuggets. Always keep your head on the swivel, chase the lead while it's hot, follow-up game, do the legwork. The same thing we do in residential. We want to follow up, we want to know their goals, we want to know what kind of business. When I talk to a client initially about commercial, if they have an existing location, I go and I visit that existing location, right? Because I want to know how their business runs. I've had, and it's a learning thing. Like I've had one where I'm looking for a retail space for a mattress company, and we get there and I'm excited. I'm like, this spot is perfect for you, but it doesn't have a back alleyway, doorway for them to get in with their truck to bring the mattresses. What did I do? I just wasted their time, right? Because these are things that you need to know about these businesses and how they operate. So if they have an existing location, I encourage you to visit that location, see how it's running, and then that way you have a picture and you're not wasting their time, right? So with commercial, you're not going to be doing a ton of showings either because there's boxes to be filled, right? This is numbers driven, this is location driven, it's a business, right? So it's not like with homes that you're seeing a bunch of homes and it's emotional. Does it fit all these boxes? And then if it does, by the time you go to showings, you're showing one or two places, right?
Make sure the Zoom is sharing the screen.
And if we get any questions on the Zoom.
Yeah, I think you should touch base on partnering up because that's what some people try to
Yeah.
get around.
Even myself, I mean, I still partner up with people just because I know I'm going to cover more ground and I'm going to give better business to my clients, right? Where I can have the other agent doing the showings while I'm, looking for the business and negotiating the business and all that. So, there's many times that I'll partner up with Marcelo or one of the partners will call me and we'll partner up. And you just cover so much more groundwork. It's just the searches in commercial are different as well. We'll touch base on that. I know that we use the MLS to do some searches. I don't think it's the best one to do the searches because it's a lot of residential agents inputting commercial information that they're not doing it, correctly. So even when you're searching, all the fields are not filled in. The price points, you'll see sometimes that it's by the month or by the year or by the square foot. Sometimes it's a full price versus per square foot. So we're gonna touch base on that and what that looks like. I'm gonna try to keep it in under an hour and a half, but it's a lot of information. We can possibly do a follow-up training to this because it is a lot of information. And I'll stick around afterwards as well. Okay, so setting the expectations, the initial consultation with your client is the most important. Like I said, if they have an existing location, definitely visit it. But have that conversation and know the ins and outs about their business, how it runs, what's important to them. Let's say if you're doing a warehouse, do they need 4 bay doors? Do they need them to be ground level or do they need them to be like the same level as where the truck unloads? Like you need to really understand the ins and outs so that you don't waste anyone's time. But the initial consultation and property search takes 4 weeks and plus. It could be way longer. I think that deal with me and Louis, by the time we closed it, it had to have been at least 6 months, but then that was that we were constantly on it. And it got to the point that we had an offer accepted. We got all the way to the finish line, and one of those levelers, one thing messed up that deal, and we had to start all over. And so it takes a lot of time, but the payouts are a lot bigger. So, I know a lot of agents that do commercial while they're doing residential because residential pay quicker, that 30 to 45 days. While commercial, sometimes the due diligence on a sale can be 6 months. If we're talking about them doing, let's say when they do the land.
Yeah, the developments and stuff.
Yeah, so.
That has to do with the zoning as well.
Right.
We'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into the zoning. It's one of the most important things so that you don't waste time putting in a tenant there. I had an agent once that put in a tenant, full moved in, collected deposits, and then the city told them that the zoning doesn't allow it and they can't be there. So you don't want to do that. You're going to piss off a lot of people and, it could be very harmful to us and to them. All right, the letter of intent, these are generous timelines. Sometimes it takes weeks, way more weeks than this, but the letter of intent, think of it like kind of like your contract to lease. When you're doing a lease for residential, you do a contract to lease and you set forward the terms of the lease. So that's what the letter of intent does. These leases for commercial can be 50, 60, 70 pages. They're done by attorneys. It's not like a template lease, right? So what we do is we do the letter of intent first, the LOI. And that's going to set forth most of the terms that are going to go on this lease. We're going to show you examples of, of thorough letter of intent so you guys can see what that looks like. And then after that letter of intent is done, it's non-binding, right? But you are putting good faith that you're working towards getting to the lease. And during that time, once you have signed that, the parties shouldn't be negotiating or entertaining other offers because at this point now you're just putting it towards the lease and, the attorneys are working. It could still fall apart at this point because there's just so much details and tedious things that they're going to go back and forth on the actual lease as well that maybe wasn't mentioned on the LOI. So I just want to set those expectations, yeah.
Do you put any deposits on LOIs or
Yeah,
always or?
I usually do. I usually put 2 security deposits, but sometimes it.
But you mean as the terms, but, or you mean actually in giving cash?
Like I would pay.
Oh, no, I put it on the terms, but no, don't give money
Yeah.
yet.
So you give the deposits, like the actual deposits, when you sign the lease.
This is
But
executed.
the terms will be there on the LOI. Okay, so the importance of partnership. Yeah, I want to go over this because when you're partnering with somebody who has the experience, let's say they have access to CoStar, which is the system for MLS, basically for commercial agents that not everyone has access to. They understand the market trends, they have stronger negotiation skills, they have an extensive network. If you guys have seen, it's a smaller like niche with commercial agents where they have off market and they it's based all on relationship and they all kind of know each other. And if you don't have that network, it's going to be harder for you. And there is clientele that is like, I'm not going to look at it unless it's off market. So that's why a lot of us keep our listings off market for a bit, try that angle. And then if not, then we go to retail and we put it on CoStar, LoopNet, Crexi, MLS, and then RPR picks it up. I don't know if you guys know this, but, and it's not, I don't think I put it here, but RPR is a really, really great tool for searching. I rather use RPR than MLS for searching for commercial if you don't have access to CoStar. But LoopNet is open to the public as well. So LoopNet is a source for the public. Your clients are probably going to be looking there too. So I would search CoStar. I would search RPR and LoopNet.
They're not free, right?
You can search RPR and LoopNet free. CoStar is not free. And to post on LoopNet, like if you have a listing, it's not free.
How much better is CoStar compared to LoopNet or RPR?
So CoStar and LoopNet are the same. They're owned by the same company. CoStar is going to be for commercial agents only. Even the public, even your clients, they can't see CoStar. So it's almost just for the commercial agents. So what I do is I post my listings on CoStar, but then I connect it to LoopNet, which is another cost. And then LoopNet is for the public.
If you go search for a commercial building, you go into CoStar yourself.
Myself, I do CoStar more for analytics, like for comps, for demographics, for traffic search, for, so it's just more, it's going to be more extensive, especially if I want to provide my clients with like a more thorough report and stuff. That's what I use
If
CoStar
you
for.
wanna find a property, you go to RPR or LoopNet.
I search all of them. I search CoStar, LoopNet, RPR.
I also use the MLS as well.
I don't love Crexi because a lot of them get outdated and they don't update the information. So then you're calling these people and those properties are not even existing anymore. So yeah, I do start with CoStar, but I use LoopNet like crazy. I know you use LoopNet.
Yeah, I use LoopNet. I also use the MLS. I start with the MLS and then I go to LoopNet and then I go to RPR. No, I actually go to RPR and then LoopNet. All three.
So RPR is picking up all of the MLSs and LoopNet and it's putting it in one source and it actually sorts it out really well. So when you go to RPR, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with because of residential, just make sure there's a tab in the right and the left upper corner. You just tab it to commercial. It's going to say residential or commercial. Just make sure that you switch over the tab to commercial. And then you're going to have filters and you're going to look the same way. With the MLS, it's just the filters are not great because the agents are not filling it out correctly. So if you put too many filters, you're gonna get 0 results. Like, I don't know if you guys have tried to search through there, but you'd basically have to keep it very vague and then start going through the listings like one by one. I'm not saying that there's not stuff on MLS. There may be a listing on MLS that's just not on LoopNet because the agent didn't pay for the LoopNet posting.
Yeah.
Or the agent's a residential agent and they got the listing, but they only put it on MLS. So you're gonna have to do some work, but that's why
I
we get
usually
paid
search
good.
at least the city and then go from there. Just like keep it very general and then just go through the listings. There's
Listen, Marcelo, again, I mean, he's done extensive business and commercial and he doesn't use CoStar.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I don't have the
maybe if
CoStar.
he needs it here and there, but he doesn't use CoStar.
Yeah.
So you can still run a really successful
Yeah, so
commercial business without it.
I'm still able to run it.
Yes. Okay, so we went through this. This is the importance of partnership, understanding the trends, stronger negotiation, extensive network, comprehensive due diligence, the risk mitigation, which is a big deal. I wanna really emphasize that commercial is run through attorneys, so they're sue happy, and the first person that's gonna get sued is the agents, right? So, which means us. So don't try to do this alone and then mess it up, and then now you're in a bigger, problem, right? So, and if you are, then I encourage you to take trainings. Like, I mean, you're here today, but also continue to. The board has really great trainings. Marcelo just took one.
Yeah, they went last week on leases. Even though I do a lot of commercial leases, I still go every year and
We want to keep sharp. We want to, we want to make sure that we're doing things correctly and that we're protecting ourselves. So again, the board has really great trainings. And not only that, you get to meet other commercial agents. And if you have a property that you want to promote or stuff, that would be a great place to do it. So I encourage you to take the trainings and to partner up. And again, just for support and accountability, there's plenty of other partners that know commercial and they still come to me and we partner up and do deals together because it does create this support and accountability, and they follow up and then I'll follow up and we stay on top and we get better service to our clients.
I think has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, so understanding that the attorneys put together the leases, right? What are the agents getting sued for?
I mean,
I'm just curious.
look, even in the case where the agent went ahead and put the tenant in the warehouse when the zoning wasn't allowed, and now they already moved all their stuff and they have shipments coming in and they've paid the deposits and they can,
So due diligence.
Yeah.
Diligence stuff.
there's a lot of ways that it could. I mean, the leases, yes, the attorneys take the LOIs and they create the leases based on that, but as far as due diligence, that's on us. All right.
Now, do you have a checklist? Like a due diligence checklist? And I know there's always outliers, but like, is there like a 80% solution on the checklist for due diligence that maybe you use?
Before I get my client into, and you can say the same, before I get my client into the actual lease, I call the city, directly. I don't just take the listing agent's word for it. So I make sure that my client's protected, and that's by doing my own due diligence.
Yeah, some cities you can look on their website and it tells you. Some of them you have to call, some of them you have to email. But
And
you
you-
also want to make sure that that use is permitted in that space.
And you can request a zoning verification letter from the city. It costs us like $150 depending on the city, but as a listing agent, I do it every time just so that I know what zoning, what the zoning accepts. So I already do that, but most listing agents don't, and it may be a commercial agent that took the listing and doesn't really know, and it's like, yeah, we can do car mechanics here, and then it's not zoned for that.
Yeah.
And the environmental doesn't allow it and it's not zoned for that. And now you just put your client in there, all his inventory is there, monies were changed, like,
Yeah.
it's a big problem.
Let me rephrase my question. So I guess my question should be, does LIR have a due diligence checklist that helps new guys like me think about like, okay, these are the things, these are like the standard things I need to be thinking about due diligence wise? I mean.
I can help create one. I don't believe we have one currently. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we could
I
create.
can,
It would just be helpful.
for sure, for
I
sure.
don't know what I don't know is the issue.
And if you don't know, people that know, so just, just reach out.
Yeah, at least
We're
for
here
your
to
first
help.
couple of deals, work with somebody until you get the hang of it. 'Cause
Yes.
it's gonna work.
All right, so we're going back to our sources. I mentioned MLS, LoopNet, Crexi, CoStar. Relationships with other agents are extremely important. Networking, social media, drive the area, and cold call. Driving the area is also important, and when I go through and I have exhausted all of the other resources, I get in my car and I drive the area. Because there's sometimes that the owner is just gonna put a sign and they never put it on MLS or LoopNet or anywhere, and they just have a sign out there. And there may just be a vacant spot that hasn't even been promoted yet. So then then that's when the cold calling and all of that starts. But that's gonna be some more legwork. That's after you've already searched the LoopNets, the Craigslist and all of that. And you can't find what your client needs, then you gotta put in some legwork. Okay, these are questions for your clients and for the listing agents. Like I mentioned, get to know your clients' business needs and their wants and their operations and visit their locations. And it's gonna be a lot easier if the client already has existing locations, because then you can see the picture and you see their operations and all that. Also, it's going to be better when you're putting in the offer and you're like, hey, they have 3 existing other successful locations, right? But then you get somebody who's like, hey, I have this idea and I want to start this business and I want this location. When it's like that, it's going to be harder to get them in there, right? Because they have no past credentials. So at that point, you're going to have to do personal credit. They're going to have to do a personal guarantee. They're going to probably have to put more down payment and all of that. So just keep that in mind when you're talking to your clients and you're learning their business. Is it a new business or is it a business that has other locations? That's definitely going to help you. You're going to want to know size requirements, locations, obviously very important. Height requirements. There's times for these warehouses that they stack things up on top of each other, but they may not be able to go so high because, let's say, furniture, it would break if if you put too many things on top. So just knowing the height requirements is important, because if they need, let's say, a 22-foot ceiling and they're standing on an 18-foot ceiling warehouse, you just wasted their time. So make sure you're asking these questions to the listing agents as well. You're reading it on whatever MLS or LoopNet that you're look for those height requirements. Access and operation, if they operate at night and the location itself has an HOA and they only allow to 5 p.m., that's important to know that, right? Parking is a big one. I'd like to know how many employees they have and how many clientele they're going to be seeing, because if I bring them to a warehouse that has 4 parking spots and they have 10 employees and they see customers, that doesn't work, right? So the idea is to not waste your time, get as many details, and bring them to a property that's going to fit all of those things. And unfortunately, 4 parking spots, even though the warehouse is beautiful, it has the height, it has the bay doors, it has everything, it still doesn't work. So there's just so many check boxes that's why I'm saying that there's not as many showings, because it has to fit all the check boxes. If not, their business doesn't work for it. Understood? Any questions?
I have a question. For the zoning verification, when do you get that and do you pay for that or do you ask the client to pay for that?
It's totally up to you. For me, if it's a big deal and I'm gonna paid 6 figures, I'm not worried about $150. But if it's a client, like if it's a client that I'm like, hey, we're gonna need this, this is the link, pay for it. Yeah, you can do either. It's up to you.
Okay, and I ask because like I know when you send for that, it has to be specific to that client. That you're asking specifically they do their business, however. So if it's a different client, you're having different inquiries, then you're paying that repeatedly.
No.
Specific?
No. The zoning verification is based on the property, so you only have to do it one time. So, and really, I do it more as a listing agent. We have done it as tenants agents just
Yeah.
to confirm.
So the cities are helpful. I will do email, so you have it in writing saying, oh yeah, that use is approved. Because sometimes I do it over the phone, they're like, yeah, it's approved, and then it may not be. Some zoning reps are better than the others. So I always recommend sending an email. Sometimes you don't even have to pay for it. They'll just tell you straight up in the email if you can do it or not. But at least you have it in writing.
Questions? Okay. And then their budget. The budget's really important, and we're gonna go through that because what I've seen is that agents are like, all right, it's $10 per square foot. It's I don't know, 2,500 square feet. This matches my client's budget, but then they forget about other fees. And the other fees are the CAMs, right? So if it's like, we're gonna go the type of leases, but if it's like a triple net, it does have a CAM. So it could be $10 per square foot plus another $6 of CAM. So now it's actually a total of 16. So that budget goes up a lot higher, and then the client can afford it, right? So you want to find out what type of lease it is. There's going to be a gross lease. Your gross lease is going to be those that are all in. It's basically, hey, this is $5,000 flat a month, and you pay your electricity and your Wi-Fi and maybe your water. That's gross. There's going to be your triple net, which has the taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance, and that's what's called your CAM. So you want to know how much your CAM is, because that's going to be on top of your base. And those are, you cannot negotiate the CAM. The CAM is what it is. That's based on taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance. It's not to negotiate, but you can negotiate the base. So if I'm telling you the base is 10, that's low. If I'm telling you the base is $20 per square foot, I can negotiate that $20. But if they tell me that it's another 6 for CAM, the 6 is,
It's
it's,
going to be a 6.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
the
what
six
it
is gonna be
is.
the
So
six,
that's
right.
property taxes, property insurance.
Right.
That's what it is.
it can vary as taxes or insurance go up for the next couple of years. You can try to do, I know you did it last time on the max out on the CAM fees.
Yeah,
But on the base, I could be like, well, we can't offer you 20, but we're gonna start at 1750. And believe it or not, those 50 cents make a big difference when we're talking about 50,000 square feet. You know, so we negotiate up to like the quarter. Because if you do 50 cents times 50,000 square feet, I'll tell you how much that is. Just so that you guys have an idea. That's still, it's $25,000. So we're negotiating up to the last quarter. But you can negotiate on the base when we're talking about triple nets. If there is. All right, so this is continued questions for the agent, for the clients and the listing agents. The length of the lease. Some people may not want, if they're a newer business, they may be a little nervous and they're like, I don't want to do more than 3 years. You know, or it's not gonna be favorable to the landlord unless that's what they want to do a 1 year. You know, and so ideally at least a 3 year would be good. But you do want to talk about the length of the lease because that's going to be really important. And that's also going to give you more negotiating room because the longer the lease, then I can play with the numbers a little bit more.
In that particular question, can it be up to the landlord to decide the term of the lease as well, or?
For sure.
yeah.
The landlord can say, hey, I'm only looking for a 3 year. I'm only looking for a 5 year. I'm only looking for 10 year plus. But then that's also going to be based on their financials. And we'll go over how to look at their financials, but they're going to want strong financials if they're going to have a client there for 10 years. So the length of the lease, will the property need build out? There's some people that want a turnkey and they're like, listen, I just want to get in there and start running my business from day one. That's great, then there's less to negotiate there, but if you get a shell of a property and it's just like concrete floors and walls, you're gonna need build out, right? So when we're talking about build out, that's another negotiation tool. And who's gonna pay that build out? That's what you're gonna be negotiating. Normally, we try to negotiate for the landlord to pay that build out and to give us what's called TI, that's tenant improvement money. Why? Because we're improving their property, right? They own the property and they're gonna be improving it for the tenant to stay there for the next 5, 10 years. So that's also why they want longer leases, because they're like, wait, I'm gonna put in all this money to do these nice floors and these glass, the doors and all of, then you're gonna, you know, I want you to be locked in for at least 5 years. Because they're putting the money to do that, you know, those repairs. Build out for TI happens a lot more like in offices like this versus like warehouses, unless that you're gonna build out some office space for the warehouse. But really the warehouse mostly is like,
Yeah, it's good.
it's like a shop.
Also for restaurants, you need
Yeah.
a lot of TI. For restaurants, you need to ask for a lot. Like I'm doing a restaurant now and they got a quote like $300,000 just to do all the build out.
Yeah.
So the tenant's gonna pay half, the landlord's gonna pay half, but there's always.
I had a build out for a restaurant that was over $1 million, but the restaurant was already an established, known name that they would want there, and we were talking about a 20-year lease. So in that case, and it improves their property. So the landlord was in for it. Okay, you want to ask the listing agent from the get, is the landlord going to be open to TI? There's going to be sometimes that the listing agent's like, hey, look, this is a property, this is how it is. We priced it fair and you can do all the build out you want, but we're not paying for it. And at that point, you're going to have that conversation with your client because do they have the money to do the build out? You know, and not only when you're doing that build out, it takes time with the city to get the permits and they're not operating their business. So then that's when the abatement months come in. It's like, why would I be paying rent if my business is not bringing in any income yet? So what you want to negotiate is fine. We'll do the build out, but then give us 5 months, 3 months, 4 months, however long this build out's going to take to not pay rent. And that's what's called the rent abatements. So right now we're negotiating price, we're negotiating terms, we're negotiating build out, we're negotiating abatement months. So there's a lot of different terms to negotiate to put this all together.
And you could miss them both. Like sometimes they give you 3 months and some TI. Like you could ask for both. So,
Is there any questions on the Zoom? I feel like we're neglecting them. No, I think it's, yeah, go here and open it. How are we doing on Zoom, guys? Can you explain more about the
Could
due
be
diligence?
pictures.
Yeah, we can get back to that. We'll get there. Okay, I'll get on Zoom. All right, so let's go back to the presentation.
You ready for the next?
Can I just make sure I understand. So abatements, basically abatement months is the times that the client is not conducting business and you're basically giving them credit while they establish their business in the location.
I'll show you how it looks like on the LOI. We're gonna give you key examples, but I've asked for both tenant improvement and abatement months. And then what you have is the lease commencement can be different than the rent commencement. Because let's say my lease started February 1st, but I'm not actually paying rent till June because I needed all those months to do my build out. And it's common, it's very well known, the landlords know that, you know, if they need to do build out and stuff, that they're gonna be asking for abatement months. I try to ask for it all. I'm like, I'm gonna try to do lower rent, I'm gonna get abatements, I'm gonna get TI, you know, and you wanna get it all for your client, but then when you go and you give that to the listing agent and they're like, hey, one or the other, you know, like, and then that's when the negotiation starts. But at least then I can be like, okay, fine, we'll do a longer lease. And then I'll take away some TI, but then add me a couple months for abatement. So there's a lot of things to negotiate while you're doing this. And this is for the leases. We'll also get it some into the sales. We might need a second part for the sales, but just trying to make it as thorough as possible for you guys. Okay, zoning restrictions, we talked about that. It's probably the most important thing. And then additional costs, we talked about that. That's what's called the CAM. The CAM can also be the OPEX, which is the operating expenses. So you might hear them interchangeably. And then property management if there's cost for that. So again, we went over these key terms. Letter of intent is going to be referred to as the LOI. The OM, you might hear that from commercial agents. That's called the offering memorandum. The offering memorandum is basically a property flyer that tells you about the property, that tells you some information. It might tell you some of the rents. It might tell you the location, demographics, etc.
Some calm, some
Yeah.
research.
So when you hear that, like if you have a list, like if you're reaching out to a listing agent, that's what you're going to say. Hey, can you send me the OM for the property? When you go or when you're looking at LoopNet, there might be a link for the OM, and that's where you'll see the flyer for the property. That's usually what you share with your client too. When I'm looking like in CoStar, it's not like MLS where you can pick listings and send them to your client. So you want to download these OMs, and that's what you have to provide to your clients. Go ahead.
Downloading without just for them.
I personally give it to my VA and have them take out the information for the agents. That's the other thing that you guys want to do is protect yourselves because in commercial, it's a little bit of the wild, wild west. And you may get screwed over with sending a property and then the client calls directly and you don't have a BBA and they're not required and you know, so protect yourselves. That's why listing agents require a lot of the NDAs or you know, I sign a commission agreement, I register my client, I try to protect yourself because we have had a lot of incidents where the client either goes direct or the agent knows the name of your client and then they try to go direct behind you and it happens all the time.
I don't know if you have that built in already in your training, but can you go over that briefly, like if you, I call you today and I'm like, hey, Massiel, I wanna look at some property, what's the first thing to do to get NFA, get the information, and then get your compensation agreement signed so that they don't go around you and get sort of.
It happens. The thing with commercial, because they're hard to find some of these properties, a lot of clients are gonna be like, hey, I'm gonna go with the agent who finds me the property. Like, and they don't commit to an agent. Like whoever brings me the best property and when you bring it to me, I'll commit to you then. So they don't really sign like a BBA like that. So
I had one sign.
what you gotta do is just be the first one, the fastest one, and
Like, I got really good with the searches, like,
work and build that relationship. Like I get to the point where the clients are sending me the property and because they're looking on LoopNet and they're sending me the property and then that they're locked in with you. But if another agent sends them a property that you haven't sent to them, they're gonna go with that other agent. So you just have to work the hardest and work the fastest. And you agree, right? I mean, I know that like I build a lot of relationships with my clients and I've done this for 10 years now. So it's past clients and I've built my business. But Marcelo meets clients through either referrals or a neighboring listing or something like that. And he doesn't have that relationship with them just yet, but he does work the hardest and the fastest and they stay with him.
I get calls all the time. Hey, my neighbor said he just rented with you, like random calls. So I get a lot of referrals. Like, you provide good service, they're gonna keep sending you people.
Once you tap into it, I mean, he has a client that has 20 locations,
Yeah, like different mechanic shops and stuff. Or every time they need a new location.
and that whole family just uses him now, but because he tapped into it, he found them like how many, like 5 properties so far.
Yeah.
And they go back to him, but he's the one working the hardest and sending them the most properties and finding them what they need.
Yeah.
And it's discouraging when months and months pass by and you're not finding the property that they need. It's not going to be always readily available for certain things, so you have to just stay on it. And that's why the partnership also is good, because then you hold each other accountable. You remind each other, you're like, oh, this client, remember, we're still looking for that daycare. And it could be 6 months and you haven't still found the property. Right now I'm looking for a school in Boca and I just messaged the client. I'm like, hey, I'm still working on your search. Like, just check in and let them know you're still working on it, because you may not be finding it right away, but they want to know that you're working on it. Okay, so we talked about base rent, we talked about triple net lease, and that's the one that has the insurance, taxes, and property common area maintenance. Gross lease is the all-in. That's why in MLS you'll see sometimes where it just says 5,000 flat, and then you just pay your FBL and your Wi-Fi.
Most require liability insurance too.
Yes, there's other costs that you want to keep in mind. They're gonna probably all require the liability insurance. Why? Because they're working from it, people are coming in and out, there's machinery, let's say for warehouses, even here, you're gonna need, the client's gonna need their liability insurance. So just, when you're having these conversations and let's say they're pressed for money, just make sure that they know that there's these other costs as well. All right. More key terms. We talked about TI, sublease. Sublease. So basically with these leases, when they're 5 years, 10 years, it's not like residential where it's like, oh, you pay 2 months and you're out of the lease. That at that point, they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars improving that location for you. They want you locked in for those 5 years. There's not a way to be like, hey, I'm going to pay 2 months and I'm out of this lease. That's not normally a thing. You can try to put it in there as a tenant, some agent, and be like, oh, if they pay 6 months, they can get out. They're probably not going to accept it because they put in money into the property. So they want you locked in for those 5 years. So if you went to go cancel that lease or default or your business didn't succeed, you're still responsible for the entirety of that lease. So that's why they allow sublease. So what's a sublease is basically that tenant has a lease for 5 years. They went through year 1, their idea, it flopped. They can't continue to pay this rent, and now they still owe these 4 years. The landlord will allow you to do a sublease. Normally, they have to approve who's going to come and do the sublease. So now you're going to have the landlord, the sublessor, and the subleasee. And the sublessor doesn't get off the hook with the landlord, but now they brought in somebody else who was approved by the landlord to come and take over their lease, and they can finish the last 4 years. Normally, the subleases, maybe they get a little discount or something. Maybe there's a difference between the price that the sublessor and the landlord had. Sometimes they try to do it higher so that they can make a little money, but normally it doesn't, because they're already paying market rent, so it's probably not going to get more. If they get equal, they're good. What I've done, if it's equal, I'll try to go to the landlord direct and be like, hey, look, we found you a subleasee. Like, try to do the deal direct and let go of the responsibility of the middle person. Sometimes they do it, sometimes they're like, not my problem, right? So you will see on the MLS for subleases. I know you guys have asked me about subleases. they can, if, what I do is I ask for a copy. I ask for a copy of their lease. I make sure that on the lease, it does allow subleasing. And then you can put the property on the market if the sublessor signs the listing agreement with you and you are disclosing this is a sublease. You guys have questions on that? Okay. Lease commencement versus rent commencement. We talked about that. Your lease may begin one day, but your rent can start 3 months later, right? But the term of the lease will still start from the day of your lease commencement. So if you're saying that this lease is going to be 3 years, it started from that first lease commencement date. You're-
The 3 or 6 months, whatever you negotiate with the rent, it's part of.
Yeah. Okay, abatement, we talked about that. Those are the months for the build out that you're asking for free or to get your business running, right? Signage rights, agents sometimes miss this, but you want to know, obviously city allowed, the city may have some restrictions on the size of the sign and all of that, but you want to have the rights to be able to put your sign. If it's a building like this, to have your sign on the directory. If you're in a standalone building, to have your sign on the exterior, all city approved, of course. Let's say like the Fort Lauderdale office, I have the big lifestyle sign on the top, but we went to the city and made sure that that size and everything is approved. And then we were able to put those signs, but you want to make sure you have your sign rights. Exclusivity clause. If you're in a shopping center and you have a bakery, you don't want another bakery in that shopping center. That's going to be competition. So I always make sure to put a exclusivity clause. That's why you don't see 3 nail places in one shopping center like that. That just wouldn't make sense, right? And the landlord doesn't want that because the landlord wants them to succeed because they want them to pay rent, right? So it's important to include that. And then the increases. Agents try to get away with not putting increases on the LOI. I think that having transparency from the beginning avoids problems, but so what they do is they just don't include it and they hope that the listing agent misses it and then there's no increases and it stays for the 5 years on the same price. That's not the norm. That's not gonna happen. Normally increases are like 3 to 4%. We try to negotiate them. We try to get them lesser. But just for expectations, that's common, right?
Yeah, 3 to 5. I usually try to go for 3.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
Every year. Because you're trying to keep up with the market, right? And you're locking them in for 5 years, 10 years. You wanna have those increases as a landlord.
and also the property taxes go up for the landlord too, so they want to be able to cover that.
This was an example of an Excel sheet that me and my cooperating agent shared. I don't know if you guys can see it, but what we did was we narrowed down the locations, the sizes, the price per square foot, the CAM, what that looks like monthly, what that looks like annually. If it had office space, how many bay doors this was for a warehouse. When is the availability, any notes, parking spots, and our contacts. I do this for any any mentorship so that we have tabs of the locations that we're seeing, the contacts, the prices and all of that. It's just more for structure, accountability. This is what mine looks like. If we've seen it, if we haven't, any notes, and it keeps us organized. Just because if you're looking at various warehouses, you wanna have, some structure and some notes. I sent you, I think in your email, line by line. Let's look at, you guys have time, right? We got some time.
No, nothing but time for this.
It's good information. We're doing good. Okay. I know it's a lot. It can seem like a lot, but it's also a lot of common sense too, and we're here to help. So,
How do you qualify, like somebody inquires, you're like, hey, I'm looking for a warehouse, this is how much I want it to be, this and that. Like, how do you personally make sure that that person is gonna be qualified for you to actually spend time looking? Like, what do you do? Like, what do you ask them?
first thing I'm gonna ask them is if they have an existing location. Because that's gonna help me, see if they're already running in business. And if they don't, then where's their inventory? Like, how are they running their business? Or are they just expanding? Maybe they're working with somebody else and now they want to do their own thing. We also ask for financials, but just like residential, you want to gauge that conversation because if you're meeting them from I don't know, a post and you don't know them, then that's different,
Yeah,
right?
me too.
But yeah, I like to, what I do is I kind of underwrite their business more than them. Like, okay, what is
More
your,
important
Yeah.
business financials than the personal.
right, right. So I want to know about their business and the ins and out. And once I have that conversation, I can tell if it's just like an idea that they had on a whim and I'm thinking of this concept,
Yeah.
that I'm already like a little red flag. And I'm like, oh, it's gonna cost you this much. We're gonna look at your credit. We're gonna have to personally guarantee it. When you're personally guaranteeing it and then you flop and you owe another 5 years of this lease, they can go after your personal assets. So, that's a
Even your
big
house.
risk. Yeah. Except your homestead, but they can go after your personal assets.
And that's what-
So that's a big risk. So they need to know that kind of risk for them to just have an idea,
He has a question.
Massiel, on that note, how often do you engage with like their CPA or financials? Cause like you said, a lot of times people are, smoke and mirrors, right? Like, am I really getting audited financials? Do I even need audited financials? Or, does everything sort of line up? So do you just go straight to the CPA? Of theirs?
If we get in contact, but also a CPA is a good resource because they're already looking at financials and numbers to
Yeah.
connect you with people that may need some commercial real estate. So those are relationships you want to have. But no, I mean, they either send us bank statements.
Yeah, most of the times they're okay with like the 3 last business bank statements, but
Okay.
sometimes they want to see taxes, sometimes they want to see your balance sheet, your profit and loss. Some are more strict than others.
Yeah, it's usually like balance sheet and P and L and stuff.
Yeah, it's through the content.
CPA, yeah.
CPA.
Yeah, that's
They,
when
they,
when
they normally get it from their CPA.
Okay.
Unless they want to connect me directly, then I'll get it from them, but normally they'll get it.
yeah, they'll provide.
And if they have books for their existing business, that's gold. Like that I already know that their business is running effectively and they just are looking now for another location. And I can see their books and then that's what I can provide to the other to the landlord.
Okay.
Which is the NOI.
How much money do you think they need to have in a bank account if they are looking for like a 10,000 a month lease?
It's not only the balance, they look at the deposits too, how
Yeah.
much money's coming in every month. Or I told them at least have the 3 months in there, like first,
At least three.
yeah, at least the
Yeah.
3 months, but
Normally they're gonna be asking for the first month and 2 securities,
Yeah.
like for move-in funds. Yeah.
no, most of the time.
And even if there's abatement months, they still want at least that first month in and then at move-in, then they can pay the other 2 months. That's another negotiating
2
tool.
months of security.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of security.
Yeah, even if your first month is doing 6 months, they still want that first month up front.
Negotiate where like the security is the base, not the CAM, because the CAM is supposed to go for taxes, insurance and all that. Sometimes they will require, they're like, no, you know what, let's have the base and the CAM there. If anything happens, that money is there. Questions, yes.
If there is a business I'm interested in reaching out, for a potential buyer of mine that's interested in purchasing. I look at LoopNet, I'm looking at the MLS, I'm looking at all the access that we have, and I see it's terminated by an old listing agent. I see it's not listed on LoopNet. I see it's not even listed on Zillow, for instance. How would I be able to get in contact with a specific owner of a business? If I don't have their name, their phone number, is it, hey, I go to the address and pop up?
No, you can go to Sunbiz
Something?
and try to, you have to just do some digging, we become yeah, I go to the Sunbiz, I try to see who the owner is, I go to see who the registered agent is, it might be their attorney.
There's
I
another MLS app. What's the other one called? Remind, something like that.
now just remind, forewarn, yeah, you can, the same way that we search for, the same way we search for owners of houses sometimes, that, and if it's under a business, and then you try to find who the business owner is, and then I look them up on Facebook, and then I send a letter, and then I just, yeah, it's part of our
I went to
job
your son. I
description.
don't see that lie in your son.
Okay,
I'll go pull
well,
that up.
let's look at one of the LOIs that we did recently.
I'll put the one I sent yesterday.
Okay.
Or no, see how one.
And I want to show you also what this one has redlining already.
Yeah, let's.
Probably airdrop it. Here, Marcelito.
Just send it to my email. So,
Hello, I was asking about the commission. I just
We'll
okay.
definitely get there. I know that that's important. It's one of my tabs. We'll do some math and we'll see what those commissions look like.
okay, thank you.
Voting.
This is gonna be a lengthier training because it's just, a lot to cover. So I'm here for the afternoon.
Massiel, is there a different underwriting process than the type of business? A restaurant where it is a furniture store or it's
Sometimes with restaurant, they're as tedious as wanting to see your menu. Like, and they want to see even your Yelp like reviews, and they want to see your Instagram, like, yeah, to know that you have good, reputable, yeah, business. So, and it makes it look better, right? So when I'm doing these LOIs, I'll sometimes include when it says the use, I'll include their website or their Instagram handle or their Yelp. If their Yelp has like a ton of great reviews, I'll include that too. Whatever makes my client looks better. I'm like, you're gonna want these people here. Look at their 5-star reviews, and it helps. Okay.
This one they provided and we just edited.
Okay, yeah. So I do want to mention that. If you're on the tenant side, we have what's an example LOI on our school app. It's very generic, you can add to it. This is a lot more extensive. But there is going to be some of the corporate accounts for that they have their own LOI and they send it to you. So it actually comes backwards, right? And then you're the one that kind of red lines it or completes it. You talk the terms with the listing agent, they complete the LOI, and then they send it to you. But the norm is that you're going to create the LOI as the tenant's agent. Does that make sense? So just ask them if they have an LOI template, or if not, then you guys, can create it. This one's a little bit more in detail, right? We already did some. Yeah, this is a little bit more corporate. We already did some redlining to it. The redlining happens all on the LOI. So we'll just go through it a little bit. All right, so you want to make sure to say provided they have their letterhead. We have our letterhead on the top of the one that we have. Who the attention is going out to. We always started by saying that we have the authorization to provide this letter of intent on behalf of our client, right? So you want to identify the parties, right? So you have your landlord and your tenant. Your landlord is going to be found just the same way, like on tax records when you look up the property, right? So yeah, IMAP, you guys can use that to identify the landlord. The tenant is going to be the business name for your client. The use, this is courier services. With the use, you want to be as detailed as possible because later on, if they're doing a certain use and then the landlord says something, you're like, hey, I told you that they were going to be importing, exporting, storing, whatever it is, just make sure that you're putting the correct use. Like a lot of agents try to get away with, oh no, they're just going to be storing cars. And then all of a sudden they're doing work to cars. That's a big red flag and they'll get kicked out of there and they'll default on that lease. Okay. Obviously, you want to identify the building address, if there's a unit. The premise is important because that's how many square foot it's going to be, right? So if there is what's called condos of warehouses, you're not renting all of them, you're renting one of the condos, and that's the term for it. And you want to know exactly how much square foot is in that condo because the client's going to be charged per square foot. So that's why it's important to know exactly the square foot. In this case, it's 3690 square feet. The lease term, we redlined it to 38 months. Why? I'm already thinking that it's probably because there's 2 more months of abatement or something, right? Because I see that they had 36 and it was changed to 38, right? And then next rent abatement, 2 months. So that you see why the terms changed. The terms became 2 more months because they're asking for 2 months of rent abatement. So when you're talking about the term, you're including those abatement months.
So I think you want to do 3 months of abatement.
Then you would do 39 months, yeah. Okay, lease commencement, and this is what we're talking about. Lease commencement may be different than rent commencement. So in this case, lease commencement is February 1st. That's when the term of those 38 months start. They may not be paying rent till June or something, but the term starts at that time. During those abatement months, the other thing is I want to say, if it is a triple net, they may say, yeah, fine, we'll give you to June, but you have to pay the CAM. So it may not be like, oh, I just have till June for free. No, you might have to still pay the CAM. I've negotiated before where we got 8 months of rent abatement and 4 were base and CAM and 4 were we're just gonna pay CAM. and not the base. And then we started the base and CAM after those terms, and those were our abatement months. So we were negotiating up to even that detail. But those first 4 months were nice, right? We're not paying rent or we're not paying base or CAM. The only thing we were paying, huh?
First mortgage, you pay your insurance and your taxes.
Yeah, but the only thing we were paying during those first month was light, electrical, Wi-Fi. Our liability insurance does start from the beginning. Yeah. Okay, gross rental rate, that's gonna be your base, basically. That's your per square foot. In this case, it's 24.50 per square foot gross, or you put it on a monthly term. You can leave it there. You could just put 24.50 per square foot. I think you wanted to paint the picture to show exactly.
They wanted to put
They
both
want-
numbers.
okay.
So I just added it. They both.
Then plus
So-
Florida sales tax, but
Yeah, we ended up scratching that off because there's no longer
They
Florida.
eliminated it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they eliminated it in October.
yeah, and that was a big deal. We had them like at 6 and they went down to like 2 and now they're gone. So that's a big deal. That makes a difference, like on their total all-in number. Okay, annual increases, they had it at 5, red line back at 4.
They're like, we're not moving from 5, or we're not moving from 4. So now I'm going.
The other thing that I want to mention is when that increase starts. Because if lease started February 1st, rent didn't start till June, then when is the first increase? The first increase may be from when the lease started. So then next year, even though you started paying in June, already next year, February, you already have an increase. And then clients are like, wait, but I didn't start paying till June. It's like, no, your lease started on February. So make sure that you keep note of that you communicate that with your client so that there's no kind of hiccups later on, right? When they get that increase hit. Water charge, I think this is specific to this.
Yeah, they had like a flat fee, which is $75. That's
Okay, then they identified it. Sometimes they have a direct meter for water, sometimes they have a flat rate, sometimes it's included. Just knowing that, and having that conversation with the listing agent so that you know what the other charges look like. Utilities, again, tenant shall obtain utility services, pay in its own name. That's normal. Security deposit. Security deposit on the LOI is always gonna be determined to review of the tenant's financials. They're gonna want to see financials. And again,
Since the LOI, the tenant hasn't been approved by the landlord yet.
no,
that's just like the offer.
this is like the contract to lease.
Okay.
Yeah, think of it like that. Like it's like the contract to lease here that you're putting in the offer. With the LOI, it depends. Do you always send the financials with the LOI? Yeah.
Most of the time I do. At least the last 2 or 3 bank statements. I send their ID, their SunBiz.
If they have really strong financials and they have 3 other locations and they have all these 5 stars and they have a line waiting around the blog and all this stuff, like then I'm gonna be like, no, we're only gonna do 1 month. We're gonna do 1 month of security deposit. This is a client that is proven, their track record, and I'm gonna fight for just 1 month and 1 month and 1 month, right? But the norm, they're gonna be asking for 2 months and first.
Yeah.
Usually. Huh?
First and free security?
If their financials are not strong, if they're newer, yeah, they're gonna ask for the world. If it's a new business, they're gonna be like, give me 5 months,
Monthly for security.
Yeah.
because they were probably a newer business. Yeah. All right. You included, dual execution, just very straightforward of what is due when they execute this lease. Because they may think that they only have to pay 1 security and then they don't have to pay until June when their rent actually starts for that first month. So you want to identify exactly what's due when they sign that lease, so that they know what to expect for for the monies. EFT, that's just for the rent and how it's being,
Yeah, that was
they
something.
included it. It's just how the rent is gonna be paid. You don't have to include that, but they did because this was their lease, right? Their LOI. In this case, tenant improvements, they put accepts property as is. So that's it, but you have to know. I like to put at least that the property is gonna be given with working HVAC, with,
The plumbing and electrical.
plumbing, electrical, and and the working HVAC, right? The other thing you want to identify in the lease, those HVACs, they're industrial size, like they can get really expensive. And if you're not reading through these leases, that's why I encourage attorneys to do it, but it may say that the tenants, and the tenant's responsible for that HVAC. And if it goes down, that the tenant's responsible for that HVAC, and that could be $40,000, $50,000, you know? So I always make sure that the HVAC is on the landlord and that's their responsibility if I'm representing the tenant. Insurance, like I said, they're gonna require liability insurance. You're running a business. There's people coming in and out. That's just, you know, common sense. Brokerages, this is where you can include the brokerages that are part of this transaction. Do we always put what the compensation is right here? Depends, not always. This one doesn't have it, but
Most of the times I do, I try to go for 3%. This one I thought it was 3%, but
it's actually 4.
no, it was actually 6%.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Yeah. So I was expecting to get paid on this 8,500. When I get back, he was like, "Oh no, you get 6%." So I ended up getting 17,000. So I got double. So,
It's like surprise.
yeah.
That's a great surprise.
Pretty honest people, bro.
Yeah, but guess what? Now he is promoting all of their properties. Now he's like,
He's in the raw. I'm like, "Oh, I have a warehouse." I'm gonna show you in the raw.
he's like, what other properties you have? You know,
Yeah.
because they're paying 6%.
Most of the times I don't pay 6%, but
No, 3 to 4.
Unfortunately.
Is it customary to do inspections on HVAC for those long-term leases to see if they're at end of life or?
You could, why not? I mean, it would only help your client, especially if they're gonna put on the responsibility of the tenant. Yeah, I would. And then when you're receiving this property, you know, there's different terms on how you're receiving it. Is it just a shell? If it's just a shell, that means like concrete floors, HVAC and plumbing, electrical, that's it. That means you have to add lighting, you have to add floors, you have to add like everything, right? And fixtures, whatever it is that so you have to keep that in mind if it's a shell. When we talk about like restaurants, we say second gen because that means it was already a restaurant and it has the kitchen, it has, yeah. So a lot of people when they're looking for restaurants, the grease trap, they're looking for a second gen because if it's just a shell, it gets costly and not only costly, but time. Like to get those grease traps and to get the kitchen and all that stuff and get the city approvals, it can be a year, you know? So just keeping that in mind when you are looking for the restaurants, a second gen is probably gonna get you in there and get your client in there a lot faster. Some don't mind it and they'll take, you know, the location fits, they'll take the time and money to do it, but it's costly and it's a long timeline. Non-binding disclosure, this is always included because the LOI is non-binding. We do show good faith and it's ethical to say that if you are signing this, then you've come to an agreement and you're working on a lease, right? So you shouldn't be entertaining other offers during this time. At this point, the attorneys are putting together that lease and you're committed, right? But there's not a deposit being held. It is non-binding, right? Time is of the essence. This is basically of how fast they can get the lease back to you after you've agreed to this. Sometimes when you're waiting on these attorneys, I mean, you had one that was like months.
Yeah.
So we'd like to include the time because if not, the attorneys will take their sweet time, right? And these are businesses that have to be started and run and they need another location. And then let's say if they have a warehouse, they may have shipments that are coming in at a certain timeline that they need to be in that warehouse, right? So that said, the property sign here, these, like I said, we do have a template one in our school. It's decent enough. There's maybe a couple things to add. Every business and property is unique. That's why there's not a lease template. You know, that's why even when doing the LOIs, it's a guideline, but it may not include some of the terms that you've discussed in that LOI. So that's why it's not like our lease, like our Florida lease that we just fill in the blank. You know, it's not like our as-is contract that we just fill in the blank. Those are done by attorneys and we fill in the blank. In this case, there's not a template because every property and business is unique. Go ahead.
What have you done before sending the LOI to make sure that you're gonna get paid your commission?
Okay, there's different ways. And you create relationships and all that, but let's say you're newer and you're gonna bring this client, hey, Milan, you're gonna bring this client to this property and you're already disclosing the name and all that. Either one, you can send an NDA on who your client is. Two, you can send a commission agreement. Marcelo was having trouble with, we can say this story, right? So Marcelo was helping a client and he showed him this property for the first time.
Yeah, I went the first time, but the listing agent didn't show up. So it was for a towing company. So we saw the lot, but we didn't see the office. And then my client was like desperate to see the office, but the agent wasn't answering. So she finally reached out to the agent directly and she saw the office with the agent.
Without you.
Without me the second time, but I had got one of them the first time. So I was the procuring cause, but the agent was trying to keep my client, keep the commission, saying that she went directly to her. So it was like a back and forth. We even had to get like Massiel and George involved. It was
Yeah. So, and the agent was saying,
sign a commission agreement
Yeah.
again. I was like, either this or we're not moving on. And my client wrote them an email.
Given to the agent.
yeah, do you want, you can pull it up to see what that looks like. They had,
Well, she came back.
basically, it just says the listing brokerage, the selling brokerage, the client's name, and the commission rate. It's very straightforward, but now we have something
You
documented.
usually don't have one with your buyer, right? With your tenant.
No, no.
I'm pulling it up now.
Can you guys, is that on the portal? Or can you guys share that with us?
I think we just added one. Let me look. This one came from their brokerage. Because that,
I mean, just like basic.
yeah, it is very simple, but the commission agreement really is. It's gonna have, again, the listing, the selling brokerage, the tenant's brokerage.
I mean, you can draft it.
Yeah,
You can draft it.
we should have one there.
But can the client sign the NDA so that they don't go around you because you're working for them?
The client can too, but this, we're talking about the commission being paid from the landlord and securing your compensation from that side.
Oh, I see.
There was like so many emails.
Let me
But she
see.
ended up sending an addendum because I was like, we're not gonna move forward. So she just did an addendum saying lifestyle's gonna get paid with 3%. That's it.
It's called commission agreement, and that's between
Yeah.
brokers.
Yeah.
All right, do we have questions on the Zoom? While I pull this up?
You want to talk about like this one, like the intro email that you chose?
Yeah, same thing, kind of, again, think about it like the contract to lease. When you're sending your contracts to lease, I mean, I hope that you're also sending the ID and you're sending the financials and you're sending a body in the email about the client or whatever, to try to make your offer look the best, right? So this is what the body of this email looks like, while also having the LOI and having the ID and having the financials. This is to the listing agent. This is from tenant's agent, right? Hope you're doing well. Attach, you'll find the letter of intent for the property on behalf of Fritanga. Okay. The tenant is a strong established restaurant operator with over 2 years in business and 4 successful locations. That's key. Currently operating in the Kissimmee, Orlando, Tampa, whatever. Has excellent reviews. Remember I mentioned reviews. And has consistent performance. They are now looking to expand to the Miami area as part of their continued growth. A few highlights for the landlord's consideration. Multiple locations, hands-on ownership, familiar with the Miami area, and has existing customer base. Because they're gonna be like, well, how are they gonna get customers over here if they're from another area? Strong financials, averaging over 160,000 monthly deposits in the last 3 months, which he included. Well known for their authentic Nicaragüense cuisine. Ready to move forward efficiently and professionally. To support the offer, we are including the last 3 bank statements, Sunbiz, and the owner's ID. You want to include that to show that they're the owner. And also us as agents, due diligence, when they give you the business name, make sure you're talking to the business owner. And go to those Sunbizes and check it out. The same way with properties. I hope that, if you're renting a property for somebody, because I had this happen to an agent. If you're renting a property for a business, it's under a business name, go to Sunbiz, identify who the owner is, and ask for their ID. Because it may be somebody else. So, my client understands the asking terms, is serious about securing the location while posing a structure that allows a smooth transition, long-term tendency with a ramp up. Those are the increases. They are prepared to proceed quickly with the terms once they're agreed upon. Attaches the LOI. Let us know your thoughts. We're happy to discuss.
Yeah, so you just don't send the LOI and that's it. You want to do like a little bio, like a little intro email, because that helps as well.
And this is the LOI we reviewed? Yeah, right. and the
But
financials,
have an LOI.
and the financials are here. And this is his LOI here.
It's like the last
This is
one.
a different one, but I want you to see and get used to seeing them, like they're similar. Hold on, let me make this. Okay, how do I move this guy? Again, I'm authorized by business owner to put this LOI together. You identify the property, identify landlord and tenant, address, lease commencement versus rent commencement. Lease commencement, I sometimes put that too upon lease execution. Whatever day that happens, we're in there.
Sometimes you're going back and forth, you don't know when the lease is gonna start.
Right, and then the rent commencement, not till April, 3 years from the rent commencement, 10,000 a month, which is gross. And then year 2, 12, and then,
Yeah, this one we did it different. They were asking for, I think, for 13. So they want to start year 1 with 10,000, and then year 2 go to 12,000, just as they get going. And then after that, have the 3% annual increases. So you got to get creative. Sometimes every offer is different, so
Right.
that's the way they want it to be.
the increase is 3% after year 2. Identifying when the increases starts is important. Option to renew, I always include options to renew, and sometimes agents forget to include that, and then the lease ends and they didn't have that option, and they're already putting another tenant in there, and now your client's stuck, right? So you want to give them the option to renew, whether they take it or not, but at least they have the option. Okay. Security deposit, he put 1 month because they have strong financials. Abatement, 2 months. It's very clearly spelled out here. Option to purchase, he included that because they may be interested on the
Yeah.
purchase. Delivery condition. This is something I always include, even if it's a shell property. It's that it's going to be with working HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. You don't want to deal with that. They don't want to deal with that. Like, make sure that at least those things are done. Utilities are usually directly metered unless otherwise stated by the listing agent. Tenants work. Tenants shall be allowed to do tenant improvement, fixtures, finishes in the premises as tenant deems necessary or with a landlord approval. Sometimes they do want, if you're going to be adding, I don't know, an office, a bathroom, they're going to need the landlord approval to do this work. Signage, we talked about signage, make sure that they have those rights, and guarantee. We didn't talk about guarantee and these leases. Like I mentioned, when you're locking in these leases for 5 years, 10 years, etc., they're liable for the entirety of that lease, right? So if they're a new company, they're going to ask for a personal guarantee. And business owners don't want to do a personal guarantee. So if they have 3 other locations, they're like, no, my business has been running. I have 3 other locations. I'm going to do a business guarantee under the business name, right? That's what they're going to want to do. That's what you're going to want to do for them as a tenant's agent. Now, if they're brand new, they're going to ask for a personal guarantee. I've gotten creative with it because I had a client that didn't want to do a personal guarantee, but they had so many business assets. They had huge machineries and all that. And I was like, all right, let's do an asset guarantee. That basically, if they default, they're keeping all of your machinery. It's a lot of money. And they were like, all right, both parties accepted that. But there has to be some type of guarantee on this because these leases, if you're paying $10,000, let's say in this, for the next 5 years, you do the math, that's a lot of money. So who's going to guarantee that they can pay that? So, and sometimes the deals fall apart because of that one thing, where the client's like, I'm not doing a personal guarantee. What I've done, I've also gotten creative is, okay, we're going to do a personal guarantee for the first 2 years. And then I'm going to show you good faith that I've paid on time for 24 months. And then we're going to switch it to a business guarantee because now my business has been running and profitable for 2 years. So it's called the good guy theory, like basically, right? They use it a lot, like in New York and stuff. So if they're new business here, you can consider that. If they're gonna do a longer lease, that's 5 years, 10 years, be like, hey, we're gonna do a personal guarantee for first, I try to say year, 2 years, and then for the remaining, after they've shown good guy payments on time, then the rest will be a business guarantee. Does that make sense? Okay. Representation is on here. The brokerages are on here. He clearly spelled out the commission because this was one of the tougher ones. Hey, I say do it. You know, if this we want to make sure that compensation shows up everywhere and that we're guaranteed this money, especially with commercials. So put it on the LOI.
Renewal too. Sometimes you could try to get paid on the renewal as well. So sometimes they don't, sometimes they do, but I always put it on there.
Please, can you repeat what is business guarantee? Please.
Yeah, so basically the business is guaranteeing the lease so that if they did default, they would go after the business, not like any personal assets of the person, right? Of, let's say they own properties or something, they could go after that for the amount of what's left on that lease. So instead, they would have it guaranteed to the business, and then the business would be the one that would be sued, right, for these monies versus the personal. So they rather do it on the business. And if you're opening a brand new business, then what can they really go after? You know, like, so you want to have it separate from the personal. But that's why I'm saying that you may want to start with the personal guarantee for those 2 years and then switch it over to the business, because now the business has 2 years of business. Is there more chats here?
Okay,
What are you? Okay, here.
I have a question about payments.
Okay, questions. Oh, I know that you guys wanted to talk about commissions. All right, commissions. So let's say on this, right, this was 10,000,
Yeah, 10,000 and 12,000,
and then how many years?
3.
Okay, so 10,000 for the first year, right? So that's 10,000 times 12, right? That's 120,000. But then the second year and third year is gonna be 12,
Yeah, 12,000 times 24, that'll be 288,
288 plus
120.
120
240.
is 408, right? Did I do that right? Okay, and then times
3%.
3%. So in this lease that he just did for Fritanga,
Yeah, yeah, last night.
it's gonna be 12,240 on his commission alone, right? Because we are doing the commissions based on the entirety of the lease plus increases. Now, when you're talking about 5 years, 10 years, and we start doing the math, when I was talking to Louis and we were doing that warehouse and we are trying to do the math and we're like, wait, the increase is every 3% times every year, and it's for 10 years. And you start adding up those numbers, and then you do, what was it, times 4%, times 4. And when 240,000 came up as a commission, we're like, Louis was like, are you sure? He's like, 240,000 just our side. I'm like, yes, we get 120 each. He's like, nah, I'm done with residential. Like, that's it. Like, after that, he's like, I just want to be a commercial specialist, man. Like, there's a lot of money to be made, and again, when we're talking about these lengthier leases, you're collecting on the entirety of the lease plus those increases.
Are the commissions always paid full at closing, or
No,
sometimes they?
no, let's talk about that as well. And also I want to include that the CAM is not part of your commission, right? So it's just the base. So when you're doing these numbers, don't, how we talked about that the base is 20 and the CAM is 6, you're only basing it on that 20, and the increase is only on that 20, not on the CAM, because the CAM is for taxes, insurance, property maintenance, right?
What is the usual split for the payments for, like, let's say a big commission, $200,000 commission? What do they usually like?
It depends. It depends on the size of the business too. Or the business that we did with that warehouse was very corporate, and they did 50% at signing and 50% at rent commencement. I mean,
6 months, eh?
yeah, 6 months. So they gave us 120 at signing and 120 6 months later, right? But that was generous. Sometimes they'll do,
Annually, I've done a lot of annually, like they'll just pay you like for the first year, and then when they bring the second year, they'll pay you the second year. So I have like 10 of those, so every year.
And you negotiate that?
Yeah, how do you structure that, right?
Usually that's already negotiated with
Yeah.
the listing agents on their listing agreement, so you can't really.
yeah,
That's right.
the listing agent has their negotiations on how commissions are paid, how much commissions and all of that. Can you try? Of course, everything's negotiable. But when you're building your business, especially your commercial business, and you have payments that accumulate, and now for the next, I don't know how many years, you have payments that are due, you keep a really good structure of following up with them, right? But you know that in the next 6 months, you have 6 different payments coming in because they owe you
Yeah.
1/3, and they owe you half, and this one owes you 1/4, and They
Like
keep,
every month I have a payment coming in from like last year. Like yesterday, I got paid 6,000 from last year. Which
we were talking about this as he was starting. We're like, man, your next year looks really good. Like to have that like
that's from
comfort of being like, next year I have these 12 payments without doing anything. Like that's it, the work was done, right? So that's just gonna be an addition to all of his other business.
sometimes it's good to get paid annually because you have that coming in.
That's
Yes.
customary, that's normally with a larger lease, how it's structured.
Just depends. Sometimes they pay you upfront. Sometimes they do it in 6 months. Sometimes they do that.
The reason is also, they don't, if the tenant defaults and now they just paid 100 grand out on commissions,
Yeah, with
they're not
other
getting that money
companies, I
back,
wanna
you
do
know?
everything else.
Yeah, or they do it at signing a portion, at rent commencement a portion, and then 6 months a portion or a year a portion, and they
Yeah.
break it up in four, you know? But those are things that you discuss with the listing agent because the listing agent's the one who's really negotiating that.
Do they put any type of term that you have to pay commission back if they default or something like that, or not really?
I haven't had that happen.
No, me either.
Yeah.
No, they're kind of like on a loss at that point, right? At that point, they're going after a tenant for the rest of the years that they owe.
But you might not get paid in the renewal if they leave before that. I had that happen to me. I was due one and they're like, oh no, your tenant left. Okay. And we go,
I had one that we got paid initially at signing, and then when we were gonna get paid our next payment, they were like, no, your tenant is in default and we're actually in the middle of a sue and we're not paying you the rest of your commission. And I was like, well, you're about to get into another sue because that has nothing to do with the terms. I brought you a willing and able client. That sue is between some condition of the property that has nothing to do with the lease terms and our commission. And they paid it. They were like, you know what, we don't want another sue. Here you go. So just, being diligent and strong and making sure that you're providing your invoices when your due dates are due, logging them. And the more paperwork that you have, those commission agreements, the better it's gonna protect you, right? So not everyone's gonna sign them, but we try to avoid those problems and be very, very clear and upfront with everything that we're providing. So we do provide the invoice and the due dates and all of that.
Can you get paid, or how would you structure getting compensated on options? So let's say you do a 5-year lease with a 5-year option. How can you even get paid on that 5-year option?
So we've been including it on the LOIs. I think on this one you saw it,
yeah,
that it does say something about the,
yeah, right on the broker's commission.
okay, here, yeah. Owner to provide 3% of the total gross rent for the initial term of the 3-year lease to Lifestyle International Realty due at lease commencement. So he's putting due dates and everything, right? And then 3% of the total gross rent at renewal. We're trying to negotiate that up front. To try to do it later on when they renew, you're not gonna get paid, right? But it's like residential leases. How many of us are following up and trying to get paid on the renewals for those tenants? Not a lot of us.
Yeah, you understand
Right.
top of it. But
So it's really how you run your business. Again, all of it is for negotiation. And the more that you can cross your T's and dot your I's and provide as much paperwork and document everything, that's what's gonna protect you.
I know it's asked for referrals.
Yes, referrals. And some of these business owners, they have their social medias, they have their following, like post that picture, tag them, have them repost you. Like we've been doing it like crazy. You think like, oh, maybe they don't want to repost me, like, but who cares? Just tag them, they'll see it and ask them, hey, can you repost me? Because now their audience sees it. Then they start following. They're like, wait, they found that location. I was looking for a location. And then that's how you really start getting your business. So, and promote it, because the reason that Marcelo has been able to grow his business in the last 4 years, and he didn't start commercial till 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Is because he's been posting it, he's been sharing it, he's been asking for referrals, he's been following up, like, he gets in good with their family, their neighbors, like he'll pass by the neighbors, warehouse or
Always put on my WhatsApp story too. Like all the people reach me out.
and then he makes relationships with the other listing agents, and then he asks them if he can promote their listings. And it's just promoting yourself, the same way we do in residential, but in this case, it's like, hey, I also do commercial. But don't be a secret commercial agent. You have backing. We're here to support you guys, but promote that, because maybe maybe they don't even go to you. They bought the house with you, but they're like, oh, I need a warehouse, but they don't do that. And they go to somebody else. So brand yourself. this is what we were just talking earlier before the training. When we closed that big warehouse, it's primarily older American folks. Like we were in Boca, and I was like, you know what? We're gonna do a big marketing video.
Yeah.
And I have the video. Okay, I'm like shy to show it, but so I wanted to make it like known that women can do this as well. Minorities can do this as well, and we can bring in big deals and make it happen too, right? So I was like, you know what, before my client gets into that warehouse, we're gonna get in that warehouse and we're gonna do this big marketing video. Marketing videos are not like the norm for like warehouses because it's like industrial. It's like they don't really do like, you don't when you pass by the counter and you show the kitchen and all that, they don't do that, right? Like nobody does that. So I'm like, you know what, why not? Let's do it. Let's do a marketing video, and whether it's cheesy or not, at least it's getting my name out there and it's promoting what I do and that I can make this happen too, right? So I'm going to show you the video and then we're going to conclude. And I'll stick around in case anybody is working on something and has questions. Daniela sent it to me. She's like, you should show it. It's this one. How do I send it to you?
Email it to.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Do we have questions on Zoom while I'm doing this? Did they ask anything on there?
What got you started in the business?
What got me started is one of my really close friends, her family has a bunch of warehouses in Hialeah Gardens. And when I got my license, they were like, hey, can you manage our warehouses? And I was like, yeah, of course. No idea. And and I just like winged it, right? Like I was like, all right, I'm gonna take a bunch of trainings and I'm gonna figure this out. And I started by managing their warehouses. And then while I was managing their warehouses, there was a land across that was to build out. It was a $6 million land. And I winged it over there too. I called them and I was like, hey, I can sell your land. No idea. And so I actually started with commercial first, and I started making, because they knew that I was already managing all these warehouses. They're like, oh, it must be a big commercial agent. But no, I just took the opportunity and said yes, and then figured it out. And I think that a lot of times we're hesitant because we don't know everything, but you don't have to know everything because you know people that know. You know what you don't know, but you also know people that know, right? And that you have that support. And I think instead of stay in the sidelines and be like, oh, I wish I can do it, just partner up with somebody that knows that can help you guys do it and put yourself out there and promote yourself as that commercial agent and then bring somebody that knows. And that's how you can step into it. I mean, Marcelo learned I think I've handed him some LOIs. I'm like, oh, this is what I've done with my LOIs. I keep all of my LOIs.
Sure.
Why? Because it's like an attorney. They refer to past cases, right? Like they don't just come up with something new. They refer to past cases, right? So what I do is I keep all of my LOIs, and when I have another warehouse, well, I'm gonna go into my files of all my LOIs for the warehouse. It's probably gonna be really similar terms. I'm gonna go to my retail stack. It's probably gonna be similar. Oh, my restaurant stack, similar terms. So I just keep those, and those become my templates.
Yeah.
All right, this is the marketing video that I did with Louis. Let's start this far.
Right now.
So. This is right before my clients were getting the keys. I'm like, no, we're gonna do a marketing video. That's it. So right then, you guys. That's it. This was being recorded, right?
Yeah. Oh, let me close the YouTube. That's all.
It was for promo, you know, I got my name out there and then other people were like, hey, you do warehouses, like, so.
It's not for sharing.
All right,
Oh,
we're
I
gonna
see.
stop the Zoom if there's no more questions, and we're gonna record this and we'll send the link as well.